So traditionally, Indian startups have always looked towards the West, whether it be UK or the US. And when it comes to Southeast Asia, they have been looking at Singapore to be their base. But recently, we have seen a lot of startups bypassing Singapore and going to Indonesia. And there have been examples like Zomato, etc. I have a few numbers. I'll start with Akshay first. Akshay, Komli has been in digital advertising for quite some time now, and you have been the pioneer in RTB. The digital advertising spend in India, according to one report, there have been like discrepancies in many reports. Some say like digital advertising spends in India have been growing about 20%, but I'll stick to the number, which is around 10%, just to prove a point that digital advertising in India in home is growing much faster than countries like China, Australia, and Japan, where they are like much lesser than that. And even for that matter, Indonesia. Still, why wouldn't you want to like expand in India itself? Why would you want to come to Southeast Asia?
Sure, I think that's actually a great question to start off with, because it actually allows me to set the base, at least from Komli's point of view, around why we made that decision. So as Surender pointed out, we were actually, if not the first, then I would say probably one of the first couple of, large enough Indian companies in the year 2012, in the digital media space, I should say. Not obviously talking about heavy industry and so on, but in the digital media space to make a very large and firm commitment to Southeast Asia. Within a year, we were actually present in every single country in Southeast Asia with at least 15 staff, 15 in every country, excluding Laos and Cambodia, of course, right? So we made our bet. Now, your question is, what really prompted us to make that bet when India is growing fast enough? For us, really, it came down to the fact that India was not growing fast enough. It's really as simple as that, right? And I think when you're a startup, you're still scaling. I mean, anyone that you talk to will really talk about the need for owning your particular niche before you start diversifying. And for us, as with, I would say, many other companies as well, right, we got to the point where I think macroeconomic growth in India, structural growth was really, approaching a bottom, I would say, or really plateauing, if not going down a couple of years back. And we felt the need to expand faster, which we couldn't in India, which really prompted the need to start looking elsewhere. And the neighborhood was the first port of call. I would say the second reason that really prompted us to actually look here was that the demographics and dynamics in these markets are very similar to India. If you're living in these markets, then clearly there's a lot of difference among each one of these markets. But if you step back from a 10,000 feet point of view, per capita income, consumption demand, right, general sort of government issues, right, around whether it's the lack of supportive frameworks, right, or the issues involved in scaling, or even the type of consumers that you're looking for, or the maturity of the ecosystem, are all very, very similar. So that, in some ways, obviously made it easier to decide to come here than, let's say, go and buckle down even harder in Australia, where we had made an investment, or go to the US or UK.
Deepak, staying on digital advertising, what are your thoughts on it?
Thanks. So our story is that, Visa was set up in 2010. We started as a mobile ad platform, a mobile ad network. And very recently, we transitioned ourselves into an exchange about 6 months back. So for us, when we looked at the mobile internet user base, one thing which was very clear for us that it's not a local play. It's not a one country play if you want to build a large business. That was the criteria one. Second piece really was that if it is not a local play, which are the markets which we should really look at addressing, given that it's going to be a large regional or a global play. So the choice for us really was to go out and either become a global company and be present across developed and developing markets. That was one option. Or the other choice to us was really choose developing markets and ignore developed markets. So we chose the latter very quickly. And like I said, like within 3 months of us starting operations, we committed ourselves to emerging markets. And for us, really at that point, back then in 2010, the data point was that as we move forward into the future, roughly about north of 50% of mobile internet users, will come from emerging markets. When we talk about emerging markets here, just to put the context, was Southeast Asia, India, Middle East Africa, Latin America. These are all mobile-first markets where we found that desktop penetration was limited, credit card penetration was limited, carrier billing, alternate payment mechanisms in form of carrier billing, a large piece there. So there was similar patterns which this geo had, and that really prompted us to go out and build business across these markets. After which, for us, it was a choice that where do we start from? If you're looking at outside of India, where do we first go out and set up base? Obviously, Southeast Asia was closer to us. As founders, it was a very simple thing that let's go out, build one region which is closer to us, learn the nuances of building a meaningful business, make the mistakes, go out and do that in a territory which is close to where you are operating from, make that successful, and then replicate that into other regions as well. So that's really how we started our piece. For us, it was at one point of time, like India is going to be, if India is today 150, 170 million mobile internet users, we said Southeast Asia today also is roughly around 125, 130 million mobile internet users spread across Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines. So these were, primary drivers. Outside of this, the other key factors here were really that because we were in the mobile piece and we really felt that app developers or the entire ecosystem around app building was kind of India and Southeast Asia. Within Southeast Asia, Vietnam, I would say that really ahead in the game. We found that that's another large partner or a large ecosystem which we would love to own. And so that resonated well with the broader as well as the tactical approach which we had. So that's really how we went about choosing this market first.
I'll come to you, Akshay. First, let's complete the Amit, you have a great clutch of startups in your portfolio like ZipDial, Mobicon, Pocket in India. In fact, ZipDial is aggressively looking eastwards. What do you look at in an Indian company while investing? Is it their ability to scale globally and come to your home market?
So at Jungle, our investment hypothesis is centered around finding regional category leaders. So global is secondary to us. The region is primary to us. And when we say the region, we span from Southeast Asia, South Asia, all the way to Pacific as well. We haven't yet sort of ventured into North Asia as a territory, but the Southeast Asia, South Asia, Pacific is a regional target for us. So to answer your question, when we looked at ZipDial, Mobicon, Pocket, and any other investments that we've made in this geography, the primary objective of that is that we see a potential of what they're doing across the entire region. Pocket solves a very important problem in the ecosystem today, where digital content owners are not able to monetize their apps, their content, and Pocket is an alternative advertiser-funded payment platform. And so we expect them to do extremely well in India, extremely well in Indonesia, and other emerging markets, even Africa for that matter, but today in this market. The teams have to have the execution capability outside of India, that's a given. But for us, I think what works is whether mostly it's a platform or a business that is applicable across the region. I don't see a lot of consumer internet e-commerce kind of companies from India coming out and trying to get into Southeast Asia. I think they'll still stay in India where the headroom is really big for them.
That's an interesting point. Why you don't see e-commerce companies coming to Southeast Asia? Maybe we can, would you like to answer it right now, or maybe can we take it later on?
I'm happy to give my perspective, but I'm sure Beto has probably Sato-san also has some perspective there. He's made a few investments in India and I'm sure he can contribute. I think where we see companies will come out of their geographies and start to look at regional or global stories is where they have a platform where the return on investment in terms of taking their platform or product to different markets is not linear. So in a e-commerce setup, the effort is linear. You need to build a local inventory team. You need to build a local marketing play. You need to build, tap into the local consumer behavior. For example, cosmetics as a vertical has never worked in India, but cosmetics, Luxola is a decent-sized e-commerce company in Southeast Asia. So I think those nuances are much more applicable in e-commerce than in platform stores.
Sato-san, coming to you, extending the question partly and also adding you announced at the Asia Leaders Summit, and I was a part of the audience there, that you are bullish about India. And you lately went to India too. So what are your plans? I mean, do you have anything to announce to the audience?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm a normal, usual, shy Japanese, so don't expect me to speak a lot, but I just speak a little, right? No love. So we have been doing investments along with our thesis, which is the platform-oriented businesses like marketplace payments started from Indonesia. So we have done 2 investments in payment, one in marketplace business in Indonesia. And then tapping into India last year, and then we found similar opportunities, and rather with a higher growth rate, like a 300%, 400% in a kind of growth rate in this marketplace payment there. So we have done 2 investments there. And if I had to talk from Japan perspective, as a Japanese investor, there's a high growth opportunity in India with larger venture capital fund. There are about 6-7 billion size venture capitals in India. And then also there's a easier accessibility to US market. So the company like Make My Trip went public. And then I think within this year or next year will be 1 or 2 Indian internet consumer-related companies will be public in the US. So talking about the why I'm so much bullish in Indian market is number 1, because I'm targeting into the consumer-related like e-commerce area. So the population is huge. And then number 2 would be there are nice exit patterns popping up, including being IPO or trade sale like Red Bass acquired by Naspers, Myntra acquired by Flipkart. So there will be a tremendous investment opportunities from investors' point of view. So that's my take there. And then again, sorry, can I add one more? Talking about e-commerce, I think it's pretty, e-commerce business itself is pretty domestic. It requires local connections to local logistic companies, logistic payment companies, and sometimes have to deal with the regulatories. So I think the e-commerce business in general is pretty logistic. So that's why we don't see much of those from India to coming over to Southeast Asia and vice versa. I think that's my take.
Thank you, Sato-san. Toby, you recently made Singapore as the headquarters, and you have an office in India too. What are the reasons for you coming to these markets?
Well, obviously, Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. I mean, from a... Yeah, so what everybody knows is that Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. So I think, apart from that, I had an outsourcing company that I co-founded with a friend in India about 10 years ago. So I have a bit of experience in India, and it was a logical choice for me to put the R&D from Unified Inbox back into India. There was a trustworthy partner, which you can't form overnight, so to speak. And that was a personal choice for me why I chose India. That said, originally Unified Inbox was founded in New Zealand, and I was taking a look where I would headquarter the company when it came to a growth stage. I went to Silicon Valley. Obviously, the US is one big market. If you tackle that, you've made it. All the infrastructure, everything is in place. I'm originally from Germany, so I looked at Berlin, which is a great startup hub in Europe. Also a fantastic place. Also a lot of hype, just like in Silicon Valley as well. And I found Singapore to be quite real, which is one of the reasons why I liked it. Real in the sense. Like New Zealand, it's a confined space of many different nationalities where you can test your product on whether it has a universal appeal. And I truly believe that every startup who thinks about $1 billion idea has to think global from day one. And to me, Singapore is one of the great places to do that from, because it's the easiest way to go into the fastest growing neighboring markets. And you have an English-speaking population. All the languages can easily be translated from here. So even from an e-commerce perspective, while you might not, while you might have all the logistical troubles, which I've also experienced, by the way, I think you still have a lot of infrastructure opportunities to venture out from Singapore.
What, according to you, are the common threads between Southeast Asia and India?
There is a certain set of core values, I would say, and without going into detail, there is the cultures in Asia are very different, but they have some common positive traits that I wish sometimes we would actually have in the West. Great emphasis, for example, is on education and upbringing of your children in terms of the aspiration, especially in the middle class. I think Singapore is a pretty mature market in that regard, but all the other Southeast Asian countries have a strong middle class with a strong aspiration. And anybody who helps that middle class, especially in India, but any other country in the area, to fulfill those aspirations, will have a great future.
Sato-san, what are the strengths of these two markets? Maybe category-wise, if you want to look at in the technology field, whether it's like, say, for example, data and analytics for India, or e-commerce, or gaming and design for Southeast Asia.
You mean talking about, again, the opportunities in India?
In both the markets, I mean,
in
what
both
are the
markets?
strengths? Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe both the markets can learn from each other.
I see. Well, first of all, what we call this time machine strategy investment that we have observed similar patterns in the US, 1996, 7, 8, when Amazon, eBay popped up. And then we have a similar situation in Japan, 1997, 1998, when Rakuten popped up. And then 2003 in China when Taobao started. So like marketplace are now popping up in India and having a significant growth. And a payment, including payment processor, gateway, and also some kind of wallet activities are popping up now in India. So we can see, and also same in Indonesia. So we can say that those proven business models that have been proved in other markets prior to the current status is now popping up in those markets, backed up by the large population and backed up by the getting high, the internet penetration rate. So that's number one. So those are the areas that we typically go for the investment. And then number two, if I can say also in this world, maybe this problem-solving approach, innovation. So I think in East Asia, mostly, including Japan, it used to be, it's a kind of a imitation-oriented, innovation. So we take a kind of an innovation idea mostly from US, and then do it better. Like Toyota also. Toyota somehow, Toyota is a good company, of course, and it's a great company. Right. But the car industry was popped up in US, like Ford and then, GM. But Toyota did better afterwards, doing the improvements. So eventually it became as an innovation. So imitation-oriented innovation is more popular in East Asia, North Asia. But in India, for example, I see lots of problems.
Infrastructurally?
In many aspects. Lots of problems, lots of infrastructure problems, lots of social, platform problems, which might be not solved for many years from now too. Of course, I hope it will be solved somehow. So entrepreneurs in India, for example, have to solve problems. And then by solving problems, lots of innovations are popping up. Like talking about online shopping. In India, when people pay by cash on delivery, the high product return rate. The average product return rate when we accept the COD, it's 30%, 30. So high, no one can make money having this, 30% return rate. But how they solve? They navigate the shopping, the customers to more for prepaid, not COD, right? Like giving some points, the mileage, for those who pay by prepaid. So that kind of thing. So also scoring, like a scoring. So those people who have a higher product return rate, we don't show, the prepaid, postpaid option, for example. So this kind of problem-solving approach is popped up from India, and then that can be also deployed in the market like Indonesia, where we see similar problems. So I think this In US term, this is called reverse innovation. I don't know which one is reverse or not reverse, but so I think those approach can be observed from India and then can be also shared among Southeast Asia market. That's my kind of a take, talking about innovation.
Akshay, do you also have any learnings from India which you can plug and play in Southeast Asia?
Sure. So just in terms of learnings, look, I think the markets are fundamentally very similar at a macro level. If you really try and slice and dice things such as per capita income, right, what stage of evolution are the middle classes in, and why that's important is that the growth of the middle class is what leads to a lot of consumption demand, right? That's really where true growth happens in terms of incomes and GDP. These countries are really similar. So at a macro level, there's a lot of similarities there. I think the other sort of learning I have, and this is riding a little bit on what Toby was talking about, I think people tend to de-emphasize this a lot, and I'm not sure why this doesn't come up. I think that's probably because we try and pretend to be very rational people, but at the end of the day, we're humans. We're not as rational as we think we are. But you never really hear that much about the cultural similarities within these markets. We talk about Southeast Asia so much, but I think very often we forget that this part of the world used to be called Indochina, right? And there's a vast difference between, I would say, this belt collectively on one side versus saying India and the Middle East on the other side. So from a geographical point of view, the distances are exactly the same. But I think working within this belt, as unified belt as such, leads to a lot more, I would say, there is a lot more cultural harmony, I would say, than in actually going in certain other directions. So back to your point around some of the strengths, I think fundamentally these two geographies have a lot more similarity than they have differences. Now, I know I'm making a big generalization, so I'm not saying Southeast Asia is one culture, but if you were to identify the mean or even the average per se, that's not that far away from where India is. And I think that leads to a lot of interesting synergies and nonlinear growth, as you were talking about, when companies figure that out. I would say the third area that comes to mind is that India, generally speaking, has had a bigger emphasis, even within the education field, on technical skills, STEM fields as we call them, science, technology, engineering, and math, right? In Southeast Asia, you don't tend to find that as much, right? There's clearly a big emphasis here as well, but India tends to be a little bit more biased there. And I think one area where there's a really good play is in taking some very interesting technology-driven innovations out of India and trying to scale them, across these markets. I'm not saying anything differently from what some of the other audience members have been saying. It's maybe just a different angle, but it's really about, figure out where some of these countries are better. Generally speaking, you find better, more qualified, right, more experienced engineering talent in India, right? Maybe grow your technology there, even if you're a Southeast Asian company, and some people are actually thinking about that. I know that for a fact. And then really try to focus on a market at a broader level across these areas. I'll stop there.
Deepak, you'd like to add something to that?
So I think, I would say that one is clearly when we look at some of the points mentioned by my fellow panel members, so the market attraction, just because there is similarity, so that's the first hump there that yes, we can go and conduct business in these markets as well, as far as an Indian startup is concerned. That's the first choice you make. The second piece is now when you're doing that, how do you, go out and build that out? You have two choices, so either, if you're a product-led, technology-led media company like what we are, so we've got our product and technology team based out of India. So India, obviously, has a depth of engineers, a great talent pool being available, a great ecosystem around that, where you get large pool of talent available, both in the digital and the tech space. More often than, so that's an advantage which companies like India had. People like us as a startup, obviously, the entire venture fund which is available in India in terms of the total fund size itself, that's also been very useful for Indian companies to kind of go ahead and pick that piece up. It's only when it came to moving out, I would say that the Indian companies, the Indian digital or the startup ecosystem when did they start looking out? The first time they start looking out was largely when they saw a mobile opportunity. You know, when it was a desktop opportunity, it's still, they kind of like for the first 5, 6 years or many years, they never thought of moving out. Mobile kind of pushed them to it. So that's really, we are seeing, you know, not just people like us, but there are other mobile startups who are today now saying right from day one, their focus is across markets. As you go out and do that business into other markets, you could either have a choice of doing an organic play or a non-organic play. So either you could go and buy some local companies or local team, or you go out and hire talent. So that's, you know, a challenge in my view, yet to be kind of proven that how. So we've kind of done an organic route. We started building a team organically into each of these markets, and culturally we had challenge in terms of identifying people, syncing that talent into our culture as well. And at the same time, we as an Indian company, if we have product and tech ops team, we have business and sales team on this side, those interactions, we wanted it to be more meaningful, more relevant, more effective per se. So companies like us, we put a lot of focus on trying to see how we bridge that, because it's one, you know, it's just half the job done in just identifying talent, but just to kind of then make things happen is a separate challenge. So there we are seeing some friction points, I would say, but as a company, we ourselves are learning, we are syncing up the talent, and closer working is helping us in taking that piece. What is common between, as we are doing that, is the fact that the talent which is there, they are ambitious, and they really want to kind of, they see this as a big springboard opportunity for themselves. So whether it is talent from India working with talent in Southeast Asia or the reverse, that is what is exciting for people in the room, and that is really helping us cement, you know, our operations across both these markets. When we talk about certain other functions, I'll give an example of another company which is in the gaming space. They were having their development center in India, but they found great talent of game development because, you know, design and UI seem to be good strengths in Southeast Asia. And so they went out and just moved the team out from India to Vietnam. And they're super successful doing that. So that's interesting. So the business and operations team is led out of India, but the entire development now is based in Vietnam.
You know, if I can just add a point regarding this whole opportunity for Indian startups coming outside, and you know, often unspoken about is the reverse of that, right? What is the opportunity that India presents to startups in this room? And I think, you know, Deepak in some ways has hit that you know, point quite well. I think you know, if you look at within our portfolio or otherwise, design sensibilities around social and mobile, understanding of smartphone as an ecosystem, I think is much more evolved in Southeast Asia as compared to India. India is just about starting to catch up on that. And but India is going to very rapidly become a very, very, very homogeneous big market, which is accessible within a 3-hour flying distance, English speaking. So I would say that now is the best opportunity for app developers, for mobile developers, to start seriously thinking about India probably as their first market, versus trying to sit here in Singapore and getting into Thailand or you know, or Vietnam for that matter.
I have one question for you, Amit, which I'll club with an audience question. As an investor, what percentage of your investment pie is going to India? And I'll club with that the question, how do you foresee the growth of startups in other Southeast Asian countries such as Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh?
So you know, it's a hard one for us to answer and generalize, because we have a very different investment hypothesis. We are not driven by local market opportunities. We are driven by founding teams that are creating regional category leaders. And for that, you know, we think India is a great market. We are getting a lot of founding teams, you know, of the likes of Akshay and Deepak here, who are coming out of India and building regional businesses. We are seeing equal, you know, volume of startups from Southeast Asia, primarily right now from Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. We also have Australian investments. So if you say that, you know, India is probably in the top 2 markets for us in terms of focus, in terms of entrepreneurs who are building regional businesses.
You're not going to give us numbers.
Well, top two. In terms of this is an interesting question. I think, apart from the local opportunities that some of these markets present, like Pakistan or Bangladesh, somebody is going to solve the e-commerce problem there in Pakistan or Bangladesh. Somebody is going to solve the mobile platform problem there. So, those things certainly, are going to happen, and somebody local is most likely to crack them. What I also feel, though, is if you look at, culturally, if you look at Pakistan, Bangladesh, they're very aligned to Middle East, Brunei, and some of the other, in some ways, Muslim-speaking, Muslim geographies. And, in my mind, that belt is extremely underserved. And yesterday, Edgar, or a few days ago, Edgar from Singtel, and we were chatting about this. I think that, it's probably, 2 to 3 billion consumers worldwide, very, very strong common sensibilities. And I think that's a big opportunity for startups to go and figure out what are their problems and, who are going to solve their problems.
Sato-san, I'm going to ask you, why do Japanese investors prefer Southeast Asia more than India, and how can Indian startups attract Japanese investors?
Japanese perspective, right? Well, Southeast Asia historically and then geologically is closer to Japan. So this is, I think, one of the reasons that we see more investors, more companies getting into Southeast Asia market rather than India. But also, as we see recent relation building between Japan and India. So the beginning of this year, Japan government and Indian government has announced the mutual fund to foster the bridge. And then I think it will be Japan after Bhutan. The new Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, will be visiting Japan after Bhutan. So to bridge, both mutual or bilateral relationship between the countries. So and then Japanese companies, mostly manufacturing companies, used to be having the manufacturing factories in China, but the labor cost is getting very high, and then there is some tension talking about the boundary issues we have with Chinese government.
Really?
I don't think so, but well, that is as far as I see from the news. And then, so it's kind of balancing for Japanese big companies to balance, and then to getting to south, and then now it's tapping to, of course, Southeast Asia, but also we'll be tapping to India pretty soon because of this, new relationship being built these days among the governments, and then
I had preserved this question for the last. With the change in guard in India, with Mr. Narendra Modi becoming the Prime Minister, and historically his leanings towards, as a virtue of being the Chief Minister of the state of Gujarat, his leanings towards China and Japan. How does that impact? Does it have any implications in the tech scenario in Southeast Asia and India? I mean, I'll leave the question to the panel, and anybody can pick up that.
Well, I just want to add one more about it. Well, I was in India visiting 3 cities last week, and at the end of the meeting, I always asked, how was the election? I mean, most of the people that I meet was founders, venture capitalists, private equity funds, and they are all positive, super positive. Of course, for the government, and then they're positive. Why? Maybe one is the new prime minister is more decisive to solve problems. And two, of course, this FDI kind of opening issue. So that's how I observed and then I was very optimistic. I became more optimistic about India. So sorry, not related with the Southeast Asia context.
Can I just jump for a second, just piggybacking on this? I'll make a slightly bold statement. This is not a political forum, so no one is going to assassinate me. I grew up in India. I left India when I was 17, but Komli was founded out of India, and I still go there a lot. India's been a mess for the last 3 to 4 years. I think in the last 50 to 60 years, it's hard to find any place in the world where so many people have been screwed so badly by misgovernance and corruption. The country is a basket case and it's going down. It's not a basket case, yes, but I think everyone agrees that it was going down that path. The point I'm trying to make is that when
Akshay,
expectations
can we
are
drive
so
back the
low,
conversation to India, Southeast Asia?
I am coming back to the point. There is a point here, right? Trust me, I'm not a political sort of axe grinder. But the point is that when you've hit rock bottom, you can only go one way, right? It just can't get any worse, essentially.
So how will it have implications in India, Southeast Asia?
If I can jump in and save Akshay here, I think there's going to be no implication. I think it's going to be status quo maintained. I think one thing which is related to the point he mentioned, that everybody feels more optimistic and that Modi and the new government is more decisive. It also means that it's going to be a stable environment. It means that people can go about doing what they have plans to do without the government impacting them negatively. So I really don't think that it's going to sway either ways. I think it will remain as is.
I think the one benefit, though, just on that, I broadly agree status quo, but I think the one thing that's already happening, I think Sato-san, you mentioned that, right, when you were in India, the elections have just been a month. I think the animal spirits have been revived, right? There is increasingly, I think, a very strong pro-business sentiment again, that growth is coming back. And I think the only difference that might make, going to Amit's point, right, I think Indian companies will just get more, I guess, aggressive about growth, which is also going to mean that I think there will be a lot more companies looking at Southeast Asia and coming here. So there might be net a positive benefit. But I agree with you that it's not like all of a sudden there is supposed to be, or there will be new policies at a government level or structural level.
We are moving out of time, and I think we'll move to the next topic. While Deepak did mention about the cultural barriers, I'd like to extend it to Toby. As a Westerner and as an entrepreneur who is based in Singapore and as well as in India, what do you think are the cultural barriers?
The cultural barriers between...
I mean, as an entrepreneur, what do you see are the cultural barriers that you would face in these two markets, or the entrepreneurs from the respective markets would face when they go to the respective markets?
I'll answer this question together with the previous discussion that we had from my point of view. I think if you're a startup, why would you bother too much about political situations? At the end of the day, you've got to really focus about execution and develop a keen sense on whether it's worth worrying about what's going on politically or not. If you waste too much time thinking, shall I get a stake in the ground here or over there, you're not executing on your idea. You're actually not focusing on building your business. Sometimes it doesn't matter where you are, just that you do it. And pretty much you will always run into trouble. I mean, that's why we are entrepreneurs. We like to get up in the morning, see a bunch of problems and solve them. I mean, at least I'm a bit like that. And there's always one problem or the other. And coming back to the cultural side, sure, but that's one of the most rewarding experiences as an entrepreneur. I remember when I first landed in India, I mean, it was like being a child again, all over again. Everything was new, the curiosity was amazing. You suddenly spot problems that you didn't know were there, so you can provide solutions. The same happens in other countries in the region. So without answering clearly on your question, because I would have to do that purely from a Westerner's perspective. Yeah. For me, if I come here, I try to see as many countries, as many cultures as possible and learn from them. I think this is what we should all do. And by doing that, we ultimately find solutions to problems that everybody knows they existed, but that, that the perception of the solution may not have been in the market before. And that enables us to create startups and ultimately growth-based businesses. And once you have identified a problem and solved it, you can grow it easily into other markets. So I would suggest travel and learn and then focus on building your business. Don't worry too much about politics.
Deepak, I think we are running out of time, so we'll have to be quickly. Tell me, when is the right time to enter a new market? When you are young and fresh, or when you mature in your home market?
Really depends on what kind of opportunity you're chasing. If you're chasing anything in mobile, I would say that pick up a large piece. Don't think small. Think large. And I would say that pick up large markets like India, pick up Southeast Asia. So this is for startups in Southeast Asia. What should they really aim for? I would say that they should not look at the world that they're going to look only at Southeast Asia. Day one, be very clear and committed that India is a part of, their business strategy.
I think we'll take one question from the audience also, so which has got 22 votes. So do you think, is it active? So do you think the e-commerce industry in India has reached its peak with the growth of massive, so it's active now, massive players like Flipkart, or will it still continue to boom? Anybody from the panel?
I think it will continue to boom.
It's just getting started.
Yeah, just getting started.
Akshay, your last word. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.